One of the caregivers also said that, I work with dementia clients all day and I'm not on my phone, I'm working, I'm engaging, I'm doing the things, and it's a lonely job. I need the engagement. I need someone to say, how was your shift today? Are you feeling okay? If a client does pass away, do you need the day off tomorrow? What can we do to step up and be available and be in touch with them? And that only happens through relationship building.
You're listening to Home Care Hindsight, the podcast where we talk with home care leaders about the big mistakes they've made and the even bigger lessons they've learned along the way. I'm David Knack, head of sales here at Zengage, and I've built a career on the idea that we learn a whole lot more from our mistakes than from our successes, which is great because I've made a lot of mistakes. I've gotten to know some of the leaders in this industry who've built amazing businesses and are super well respected. So I thought it'd be fun, instead of asking them about the great things they've accomplished, to have them tell the story of one of the biggest mistakes that they've made and how that mistake changed their thinking and the way they run their business. All right, welcome back to another episode of Home Care Hindsight, brought to you by Zengage. I am joined today by Michelle Cohn. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Good to be here.
It's great to have you. For people who aren't familiar with you, how would you introduce yourself?
My role is I am the SVP of Industry Engagement at HomeWell Franchising, and I think that's where most people are familiar with me or know me, unless we've worked together or been colleagues in the past. And really what my role here now at HomeWell in my 10th year is, I see myself as this kind of bridge of what's happening globally, nationally, across the healthcare ecosystem, home care, our partners' workforce, legislation, payers, and even what's happening with rehabs and hospitals and CMS, and what impacts them impacts us. So being very aware of looking at opportunities and challenges and what's bubbling up within that healthcare ecosystem, and seeing how that plays with us at HomeWell as a franchisor or our franchisees. How can we take that insight or those opportunities, those relationships, and bring something of value or of awareness or education or support to our system, capitalizing on those types of things.
Very good. I think when most people hear industry-wide, CMS, et cetera, they either are or are not doing Medicaid services. And that's kind of their relationship to CMS is, are the rates going up or are the rates going down? What's one thing that you see from, think of another stakeholder in the home care ecosystem, in the post-acute ecosystem, maybe a rehab? What's one change that is top of mind for you that CMS has come out with that's impacted one of those partners in the post-acute ecosystem? And then what does that mean to home care?
So you and I were talking about big mistakes, right? And I think that that's one that bubbled up really quickly. I think it is a mistake to not be aware of CMS and Medicaid and VA and what's happening with those partners because you feel that you live in maybe a private pay non-medical world. And you live in this bubble of CMS is not a payer for us, right? Or I'm not doing Medicaid, that's not my problem, right? And I think that what we need to really flip the script on is these are our top referral sources. These are also a part of our client's journey. We are all in this together, and healthcare and home care is really moving towards a more collaborative, value-based, relationship-driven industry, more so than it ever has been before. And not paying attention to those tea leaves, I think, is extremely short-sighted if you feel that what impacts them does not impact you. And a couple of those, one of them being the guide model, right, for dementia care support. That is huge, and that has been recent. We are a partner with Pocket RN, and we have, I'd say the majority of our franchisees over probably the past 3 months have been going through that process with Pocket RN. And then at the end of September, CMS put the kibosh on there was no further renewals in the hospital at home program, which just yesterday I heard that they have now reenacted the hospital at home program through 2030. And you may think, well, that's home health and that's hospitals and that's SNF and that's all that. How does that impact us? Well, when there's dollars in funding and a push and a movement behind transitioning those patients home to be cared for at home, ADL and personal care support has to be a part of that conversation for those models to be successful, whether we're being directly reimbursed by CMS or those partners or not. And so understanding that, okay, these folks are going home, this has been lifted and reinstituted through 2030. That's opportunity. We need to be aware. We need to be out there. We need to be having that conversation. Are you involved? How does this impact your patients? And how can we be a part of that?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to change gears a lot entirely, which is today is December 3rd when we're recording. I have a half marathon I've been training for on Saturday, December 6th. I tweaked my ankle yesterday because I was running and a guy tried to run me off the road and make me flat. No. So I jumped into the ditch and, it's this whole thing. I think it's going to be fine. I've tweaked plenty of ankles before because I'm bad at basketball. But you have a background as a runner. Tell me about that.
I do. So in a prior life, imagine this, little Michelle Sellers in the early 1980s, coming to my dad one day in 4th or 5th grade saying, Dad, I really like to run. I beat all the boys out when we're doing PE classes. Really want the opportunity to do this if there's anything that comes up. And my dad had seen a local fun run and said, all right, you and your friend like to do this. Let's pull it together and see if you can do this. And I think within 3 weeks, I ran my first 10K. Won my age group for under 16. Fast forward, that was November, and by February, just a few months later, I was running my first marathon. And that was at the tender age of 10. I retired at the age of 12, setting a few records along the way. I know one of them is still held this day for 10-year-old female marathon winners. But you and I talked about the reason the record won't be broken is because they don't want to really capture national running data statistics on 10-year-old female marathon runners. So I guess that's going to always be there, which I think is interesting, but it frustrates me because it's not my best time. I ran a sub 3 hour before I retired at 12 and walked away at that point. And that was just short of a record, and it frustrates me all these years later.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'll update everybody on my half marathon time, but for the non-runners out there, my hope is to break sub 2 hours on a half marathon, which is like a 9-minute pace. Sub 3 on a full marathon is like a 650 mile. Like, that's crazy. So
I told you it was a prior life. Yeah. When I walked away, I walked away. Yeah. But I was having some issues with my knees and my hips, totally. A couple of injuries. You can imagine, right? Yeah. The female marathon was in 1984 for the first time, and I was running these marathons in 82 and 83.
It's crazy.
So, I was running marathons before it was even allowed to be an event in the Olympics.
It's crazy. Okay, well, I brought you here because you have a strong track record in the industry. You've been around a while. You're somebody who I think is really plugged in on a national level. But that's not why I had you on the show. Instead, I bring people who've accomplished a lot in their careers on this podcast to talk about the big mistake that they made in their career and how that changed the way they think about life or about business. So anyways, Michelle, what's your big mistake?
So honestly, I think a mistake that I made early on, and I have really done my best to correct that, is personally, I wish earlier in my career I would have taken more risks. I would have been more of a risk taker. And that, I think, is just you're building the confidence and you're becoming a subject matter expert in your field. And so we all face that imposter syndrome. We're not ready for that leap. We're not ready to make that jump. We're not ready to try for that role or to sit on that committee or be part of that organization. And what I've learned is take the jump and then stretch, right? Take the jump, take the leap, say yes, stretch. Because if I had not said yes to a position in home care in probably 98, I wouldn't be where I am today. Yeah. And that was something that I was very nervous doing. I had been in the restaurant industry for 6 years as a corporate trainer and had a young son. I'd been married for about 4 years, went through a divorce. It's not conducive. Restaurant management hours are not conducive to single moms with a 2-year-old.
Correct. And home care is.
That tells you how green I am. Yeah. I thought I need 8 to 5 daycare hours. Let me go work for this company that's a large regional home health hospice and private duty company and be a scheduling coordinator.
Oh, nice.
No idea. And what's even worse is I was really mentored by a fantastic registered nurse. Took me under her wing. I didn't know what census was. Yeah. She retired about 8 weeks in, and I inherited the department. So talk about a big moment to say yes. But I think about all of those inflection points, and had I not said yes, or if I would have been timid or not stretched and been mentored and really paid attention to everything that makes an organization work, I think I would have been challenged moving forward in my career.
Is there, as you think about risks that, like, because obviously you've taken some risks, it's a really great story. Like, I was going to ask, why was that a risk? But like, it's right there. Like, you had a 2-year-old and you were making a industry career change. So,
and I was terrified, David. When I was going through all the college prep curriculum and going through college, I was a history major.
Sure.
I had no idea what I wanted to be. I knew I didn't want to be a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer because I was extremely shy, and the thought of someone's life in my hands absolutely terrified me. So the fact that I ended up making this 360 and being very highly integrated into healthcare and home care over the past 27 years, my 18-year-old self would have never, ever, ever believed that I would be sitting here on a podcast with you today.
Yeah. I think there's a degree to which, like, if you're not terrified of having somebody's life in your hand, like, what are you doing in home care? Because this is life and death business. And I think, some of the best operators that I talk to treat that with some levity, because this is like, this business can be so silly. You have to laugh, to keep from crying. But also, like, this is real work that's being done. And these are like, this is not like, it's non-medical, it's non-skilled, it's all that. But like, literally, we are standing in the gap for so many families, for so many folks as they age where they want to in their home. As you think about the risks that you did and did not take, is there kind of a one that got away?
Oh, there's always a few that got away. And some of the folks that will be listening to this on LinkedIn are probably going to recognize those opportunities. I've worked with a lot of fantastic individuals that lead large organizations, and we are still close colleagues to this day. And I think what I did to help minimize, really huge future mistakes is to really pay attention. Right? Pay attention to processes, workflows, my supervisors, their interaction with the clinical team, what their communication styles are, to try to minimize the opportunity for those big mistakes to occur because of lack of awareness, education, or support on how to handle that situation. So looking at mistakes and finding ways to, I always say, turn haters into lovers, right? If you make a mistake, own it, find a way to fix it, correct it. The best thing you can do, even with a referral source where I have made every mistake known to man back in my day, is to own it, correct it, have an open line of communication about it. And then the best thing is turning those haters into lovers, and those folks being your top referral source because you were able to be transparent, vulnerable, and have a conversation about it.
I think that's good. When you talk about attention to detail, I'm aware of the fact that 100% of the people on this podcast right now are like high functioning ADHD people. So game recognized game, welcome to the show. But I also think about every third home care owner I talk to, like you've got your CPA types and your like legal types, like the very like attention to detail, operations heavy folks that get into the business and are real good in spreadsheets and stuff. And then I think there's people like you and me that get into it because I always wonder if somebody's self-employed because they're so good at what they do that they'd be successful anywhere, so they decided to go into business for themselves. Or I've met some people who are self-employed who are closer on the spectrum to unemployable. And so the only person they can work for is themselves. Talk a little bit about how you think about like that personality trait / mental illness / condition to live with. Described it to me as like a blessing and a curse, like a superpower, but also like,
It's self-awareness. The sooner you can learn self-awareness and what you're good at, what your strengths are, and what you're not so good at, and surrounding yourself with a team or with people, even my spouse, he's an accountant, right? He's not a type A like me. That's where the magic really happens because we need each other. We need each other to meet that gap or that need. I think what's interesting too is HomeWell's been my first opportunity to work and become very entrenched in the franchising model, particularly as the franchisor. So what you're describing, we see. We have the CPAs. We have those that have been nurses at a hospice agency, and we have everything in between. And that's great because all of those strengths are a positive for this model. You can hire for the gaps that you need filled, right? And you should. You don't want a bunch of Davids at Zengage. I don't want a bunch of Michelles on the corporate team, right? We need a mix in order to provide a fantastic balance to be able to meet our franchisees where they are. And that's true in business ownership. You need to make sure you're meeting your employees, your clients, whoever they may be, where they are. And oftentimes that means having a team to support you in that endeavor.
Great. I want to transition to a part of the podcast where I ask you about something that's underrated. The industry generally doesn't think about it enough, and you think that it's actually like the secret sauce that people need to be thinking about all the time.
And this is going to be so simplistic that it's almost embarrassing, but I would challenge anyone to disagree with me and have a real conversation about it. I think that we as an industry are almost losing sight of the core value that we bring, which is great quality care. I think oftentimes we get caught up in the bells and the whistles and all the other things that are out there, and how to convert more leads, how to capture more referrals, how to increase my conversion, how to do this, how to do that. Your greatest asset that you possibly have in your organization starts with your very first client and providing exceptional care to that client. It will get better over time. But people want to work for agencies that are providing exceptional care because that typically is a reflection of the type of support and training and onboarding and that you're providing for those folks that are working within your organization, right? Great quality client care as your greatest acquisition tool for client acquisition, for caregiver acquisition, for retention across both channels, for satisfaction across both channels. It's a inward out approach. Take care of your first 1, 2, 3 clients. Have a story, have outcomes, have programs, have conversations, have data to speak about. And that is going to be extremely helpful to propel your acquisition, brand awareness, community education and awareness efforts by starting small and making sure that you're doing a really good job providing fantastic care to that client, and everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, it's great. It makes me think a little bit about, I was sitting in on a caregiver panel at a conference not too long ago. And one of the things that really stood out to me was these were great quality caregivers that this agency owner had brought in to really represent her brand well in front of all these other franchisees. And the thing that stood out to me about those caregivers is they were like, don't hire losers, right? We provide excellent care. We are sticking around in large part because we feel that this owner has really high standards for the caregivers that she brings on. And the easiest way for you to lose us as amazing caregivers in the agency, of course, they're all nice and humble and stuff, but like is to bring on a bunch of bozos. And, that's not like a hiring playbook for you. Don't hire bozos. But I do think that's something to think about, is what's going to be the impact of bringing on these caregivers to the rest of the agency, to the rest of the caregivers, to the rest of the clients. Because if your best caregivers feel like they're the only ones who care and they're the only good caregivers that you've hired, like, are they at the right organization for them? That was, for me, I think, a big takeaway of like, your best caregivers don't want to work with inconsistent caregivers, bad hires, that kind of thing.
You're right. And, when you're focused on being an employer of choice model, being an employer of choice provider, being the agency, the top 1, 2, 3 agencies in town that every caregiver wants to work for, that is a huge marketing tool for you, right? And I think we don't always think about caregiver acquisition, retention, and satisfaction as a marketing function, but it absolutely is. And you're 100% right. Having a very targeted caregiver bonus or incentive structure in place and communicate it often to your top caregivers, because you're 100% right. They know that if they bring in a cruddy caregiver, it's going to be them getting the call on a Friday night or on a weekend or at 6 a.m. in the morning when there's a call off. So they're only adding to their frustration if they're just casting a wide net. So knowing that your brand, your agency, your culture, your support, your engagement, your appreciation, your onboarding, and creating this employer of choice model from your very first hire, I think is a huge win and is low-hanging fruit to help support your acquisition, retention, and caregiver satisfaction efforts.
I totally agree. What are some of the shiniest of objects that you feel like people are getting distracted by right now?
So, AI and tech is out there, right? And coming off of all of the conferences that we've been off the past few months, it's everywhere, right? And I love it. I think there's going to be fantastic. We're seeing it now, oftentimes with many of the partners we work with, creating efficiencies in client acquisition workflows or processes or care plan or assessment reviews to speed up that process and make those things much easier. I think that recognizing that those enhancements and efficiencies and opportunities, at the end of the day, hopefully home care operators and owners are going to recognize that frees up more time for the personal side of the business, right? I think that those things should absolutely be there to support a lot of the minutia and can work and play nicely with home care.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, being physically in the home, physically able to touch and lay hands on the client, engaging the client, supporting them, offering that peace of mind to families, being able to hear those stories from caregivers to care managers and care managers to their business development directors, and they're spreading that to the community. Your schedulers, your recruiters feel good about the work that you're doing. I think that that's incredibly important.
I couldn't agree more. And I think there's a lot of kind of like AI noise out there of like, we're going to do, these important parts of the scheduler role as an example, right? And it's like, the advanced scheduling and client caregiver matching and those kinds of things. And my thought is, I'm worried that's the part of the job the scheduler likes the best and they don't get to do near enough. And so my question is, what are the parts of the scheduler role that we can automate that prevent them from being in clients' homes, that prevent them from introducing a caregiver the first time they show up to work with a new client? Because being a caregiver can be a really lonely role. And if you call the office for help on a particular client's care plan because you're like, I cannot find the coffee filters, right? I can't find the soap we use for bathing. Having somebody who's been in the home and who's able to say, oh yeah, I know based on talking to so-and-so who works with them, like having those relationships with the clients and the caregivers reduces that sense of aloneness so much. So yeah.
Yes. Coming off of a few conferences, HCA-OA is top of mind, the national caregiver nominees, the panel that was that first morning. I was front and center with a notepad because I am always excited to hear from our caregivers. It was very validating for us as a brand and our acquisition, retention, and satisfaction strategies that we have at HomeWell. But it's the little things, hearing from one of the caregivers that, if I've been working with a hospice client for 2 months and they pass away and I'm upset and I'm emotional and I call the office and no one calls me back. I'm having an issue with a client that is very traumatic. I get it figured out myself. I call the office for support and they tell me figure it out or no one calls me back. Those are little things that I don't want to get lost with AI and chatbots being a replacement because, one of the caregivers also said that, I work with dementia clients all day and I'm not on my phone, I'm working, I'm engaging, I'm doing the things, and it's a lonely job. I need the engagement. I need someone to say, how was your shift today? Are you feeling okay? If a client does pass away, do you need the day off tomorrow? What can we do to step up and be available and be in touch with them? And that only happens through relationship building. We always say this is a hyper-local relationship industry, and I think too often we think about, relationships with rehabs and with my community partners, and that's great, but it's the relationships with your internal team and it's the relationships with your caregivers and how they relate to one another is extremely important.
Yeah, all of those are the kinds of things that we're thinking about with developing our AI scheduling agent functionality. Is how do we clear the runway for those kinds of really high impact relationship driven conversations and have the team spend more of their time doing that than doing the kind of robotic stuff that doesn't matter who does it, it needs to get done. And so those are that's the lowest hanging fruit for AI and automation to take care of.
And I think that's a huge opportunity for us, especially when we're hiring maybe RNs to be care managers. Some states require it. Yep. Maybe they've worked in skilled home health before and they know the hours of documentation, right? The oversight that's required, the freedom that is allowed in non-medical home care for them to stretch and for them to make an impactful difference in this space is something that's very opportunistic for those types of folks. Yeah. So, we need to just kind of recognize that and understand that it is the personal part of our industry that is so attractive for clients, for families, and for care teams that work for us. But we have to educate them on what you can do and the impact you can actually make, because that's the reason you got into the business. And really letting them know what you as a brand can do with your programs, with your support, with your training, with your mentorship that is different than, or that they've experienced in the past or have never worked in non-medical and don't know what it's about.
I ran a webinar yesterday with friend of the show, Emily Isbell, and one of the things that she emphasizes in every tactical operational resource that she puts together is how important starting with why is and having like the mission be really clear. And that's one of the things that I'm hearing you say is operational excellence begins with an orientation to mission.
It does. It 100%. And that why needs to be communicated on your website, in your Who Am I video, with the team video, on social. It needs to be something you lead with when you're interviewing or building your team. It's a part of the culture that you're instituting and continuing to nurture in your organization. It's one of the most important things that you can focus on.
Okay. We talked about a big mistake that you made. But I want to hear about a little mistake that you see other home care owners make all the time. And if they quit, it'd make their lives or their businesses like 10 times better.
Well, I think that a little mistake that actually could be a very big mistake, but is an easily fixable mistake, which is always what we want to hear, right? I'm not going to try to get you to reinvent the wheel.
Sure.
And this is also kind of table stakes, but I think is a great reminder because we even see this within our system as being an opportunity, and I hear it externally as well, is having a really solid intake process, right? It doesn't matter how much you're spending on digital, how many sales reps you throw salaries and bonuses at and toss out into the field with sales plans. It doesn't matter how many care managers that you hire in your organization. If that is problematic, that is going to be something you absolutely need to get ahead of.
What are some of the biggest problems that you see with the way that folks do intake?
Not answering the phone in the first few rings, not being prepared, not having a solid inside sales process to be able to engage the caller and ask them, how did you hear about us, but how can I help you today? Walk me through your situation and what you need. I'm not sure you're in the right hands, but if you're not, I probably can place you in the hands of a community partner that meets your needs. So walk me through what you're challenged with today. And you don't know if that's a discharge planner, you don't know if that's a family member, you don't know if that's the client themselves. So letting them paint a picture of what keeps them up at night, what their challenges are, and using that insight to then have follow-up questions. But you're also listening for falls, rehab discharges, dementia, family living out of town, social worker discharging the patient this Friday. And in that, they are painting a picture of needs, med reminders, physician appointments, fall risk, readmission risk. These are programs now that I am thinking of through this conversation. I'm going to validate what I heard and then confirm that these are the things that we can help with. But it can't just be one person that knows how to do a very solid intake call. It needs to be everyone on the team. So if you and I were working together and we were both doing that, but I'm at an event, I need to know and you need to know vice versa, that both of us are going to do a fantastic job. And also confirm that they have a payer, that they understand it's non-medical. We're not doing skilled nursing or wound care or PT or OT. So you want to make sure that you're doing a great job of pre-qualifying that caller before you just push them into an assessment and throw the care manager out there and their conversion rate is going to be crud. Because if you do a fantastic intake process, if they're not in the right hands, you're going to be able to refer to a community partner and there's an opportunity, right? If they are in the right hands and they do have the right payer, then you can set that care manager's assessment up for a success. And oftentimes we strive and see a greater than 80% assessment to admission conversion rate because we are not wasting the care manager's time to go and perform an assessment on a client who thinks we're home health or doesn't understand why Medicare doesn't pay for our services. You need to have that built into your process so you can educate and be available and be a resource to them, whether they need you now, down the road, or with another community partner.
Yeah. There's two kind of ditches at the side of the road that I'm sensing here. And one is we get our care managers in a home with someone who's not qualified because what they really need is home health. Or we don't get in the home with somebody that we should get in the home with. And so talk me through, because I think the second one makes a lot of sense, right? Really understanding the needs, understanding what your programs map to, and then listening for the stuff that would say, oh, what you actually need is home health or hospice or, something like that. And so talk me through, what are the things that prevent that caller from being converted to an in-home assessment? And what are some of the things that really clear the runway for us to get into the home?
A lot of the triggers, it's exactly the reasons why we wouldn't be in the home would be, Medicare as a payer. They think that we are, they're in the wrong spot, right? So we can remove that pretty quickly. But let's say that it is between us and they know they're gonna get off the phone with us and call another agency, right? So what can we do to get ahead of that? And I think of that, a lot of that is not trying to sell what they don't need. Take a minute to listen. In my instance, it'd be, David, I'm so glad you called us today. Walk me through kind of what led you to calling me today, because I know you're not sitting here at 4:00 on a Thursday with nothing better to do than call home care agencies. So tell me about your situation and what's going on. And this may be the first time anyone has asked them to truly say, how are you doing and what's the situation and how can I help? And then I'm just looking for opportunities to help. Right? Not fit them into transportation if they don't need it, or personal care if they don't need it, or this program if they don't need it. I'm listening to what they do need, and the majority of the time they are in the right hands. So I need to set the right expectation of, okay, David, you told me that your loved one's getting out of the rehab on Friday. He had a fall 6 weeks ago. Your mom passed away 6 months ago, and you live 3 states away. From what I'm hearing, you're going to need help with transitional care support in the home, transitioning from facility back to the home. He lives alone, so helping him with his personal care chores, bathing, dressing, toileting, med reminders might be something that's needed as well. Definitely engagement. You said your mom passed away 6 months ago. You live 3 states away. Making sure that we have a very open communication plan between you and your dad and our team. We have some technology to help with that. And what we'll do is we can go in and do X, Y, and Z and provide a home safety assessment, recommendations, community partner suggestions, all of that back to you. What you want to do is make sure that you're pre-qualifying, listening, validating what you heard, and this is the solution that we could provide. And my goal is to provide them with such great education that if they do call the next agency, they're going to be like, oh, well, tell me about your transitional care program. I spoke with an agency that told me about theirs, and they're going to be like, what do you mean? What does that look like? So you have to be prepared for that, right? And then they're lots of times going to drop the ball and call you back. Or they're going to be so confident in the information that you've provided that they don't want to make another call. They're already exhausted. They're worn out. They don't have time to be calling and vetting all these agencies. You want them to feel comfortable and confident with you. And whether they choose you or not, there's going to be follow-up educational emails, maybe what is home health and what is home care, maybe a resource or a blog. We do a great job with that on our community education and trusted tips on our website. Provide that back to them so they can make an informed decision on home health and home care and where they can go in the future. But what's going to happen is even if they don't use you, they're going to remember you. And they're going to be thinking in the future about, wow, I had that great conversation with Michelle over at HomeWell, and maybe she knows a great assisted living in town that I could call and ask. And we do, so we can help with that, right? But even if they don't and they choose another agency, send them the resources, send them the educational pieces. Because what we also see is oftentimes those that we do lose, they're not lost forever. And the first time there's a call off or a shift miss or no care management oversight or that agency drops the ball, they're going to then go, wow, okay, now I know what the 50 cents or $1 an hour more is getting me with HomeWell, and that's peace of mind. And I should have I felt it in my gut when we had the conversation, but I feel validated by that now.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. Okay, we've talked about a lot of mistakes, but I like to end every episode on a high note. So tell me about something that's happened lately in the business that you're really proud of.
So some of the things that I'm really proud of for us as a brand, let's speak a minute about that, is we're having a record year in terms of franchisees that have signed with HomeWell and a record number of openings. So I couldn't be more excited about the growth and the excitement that we have seen with home care, and particularly with HomeWell. Every week it feels like we're signing a new location and we're opening a new location, and I know that we're going to be able to make a greater impact on workforce and on clients and our communities when I see these opportunities arise. And then I'm always excited to see those owners see that realization of business ownership come to fruition through franchising with HomeWell, because it's a big moment and they're very excited about it. And all the training and the onboarding and the signing and in many states it could be a long licensure process. You're finally here and we're ready to go, and they have that confidence to launch successfully because of understanding home care, understanding where we fall within the healthcare ecosystem, understanding the demographics and the boomers and the Gen Xers and 2030 and all the things that we're seeing more payer interest than we've ever seen before, seeing more federal interest and state interest in home care than we've ever seen before. It's just a fantastic time to be in home care, and I don't think that I've enjoyed being with HomeWell and working within home care more than I probably have in the past few years, and I can imagine that's only going to continue to increase as we get closer to 2030.
That is so good. Well, before we get out of here, what do you want to plug?
What do I want to plug? If you're interested in HomeWell at all, or you are looking at aligning in a community partnership of any type with one of our local HomeWell agencies, please go look at homewellcares.com, find an agency close to you, and have an open line of communication. Often, I know you have a lot of followers that aren't in home care, that may be in hospice or home health or other things, and if we are serving a like-minded client, reach out. There may be opportunities where we can collaboratively meet the goals of the patient. If you're interested in learning more about franchising, HomeWellFranchising.com, we'd love to talk to you. Oftentimes we have owners that have launched independently or are interested in maybe flipping their sign and becoming a HomeWell franchisee. And if you're interested in exploring an opportunity such as that, we'd love to talk to you.
Sounds great. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, David. It was wonderful. Thank you.
On behalf of the team here at Zengage, thanks for listening to the show. We'll be back next week with another episode, so be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. Leave us a rating while you're there. It helps other people find the show. If you have comments on the show, drop me a line, david@zengage.com. Would love to hear from you, chat with you there.